Good evening and welcome to the Legal Eagle Review, an informative and thought-provoking weekly show covering legal issues affecting everyday people. We know that there are many things you could be doing with your time, and we appreciate your decision to share this time with us. I'm Irving Joyner.
And I'm April Dawson. We're law professors at North Carolina Central University School of Law, and we're your co-hosts. The Legal Eagle Review is sponsored by the NCCU School of Law and the Virtual Justice Project. We thank you for joining us this evening. As the digital transformation continues, more and more of our devices are being connected to the internet. In addition to smartphones, we have smart speakers, smart cars, smart light bulbs, smart refrigerators, smart doorbells, and the list goes on and on. While there are many benefits that come with smart devices and Internet of Things, there are very serious privacy implications associated with the collection of consumer data, much of which is sensitive information. These smart devices also pose significant security risk as hackers target these devices to steal data and engage in cyber attacks. On this evening's show, we're going to talk about privacy and security issues that arise with consumers' increased use of smart devices. Joining us for this discussion, we have in the studio with us Zachary Mitchum. He is the ITS Director of Security and Compliance at the North Carolina Central University. We have Carl Hill. He is the CEO and co-founder of Golden Technology Services. And we have joining us on the telephone Dr. Janetta McCullough. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Xi Robotics, LLC in Atlanta. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
So I want to first start with having each of you just kind of talk a little bit about your background and what role you play when it comes to the internet, technology, and let's just start there.
Okay, I'm Zachary Mitchum. I got my background in the military. I worked 20 years as an Army officer, and I got my basic experience working in physical security, operational security there 37 years ago, and ever since then I've been doing this in and out. So I come from the framework of keeping it simple, given that from the time that I was raised in Macon, Georgia, if I can put that plug in for my hometown. Okay, that was a time we didn't have a telephone in every house. And so as we advanced and evolved, it went from the telephone being a situation of a communication portal where you had one in a neighborhood to people wanting to be more connected where you had phone booths now, right? That was our cell phone. So if you had an accident or incident, you had to go to the nearest phone booth, and you had a phone booth everywhere you went, right? And so that's where I come in. I want to keep it as simple as possible, entertaining as possible, so people can consume it with not being intimidated by zeros and ones and terms, but just keep it to the simplest element. And then, each one reach one. Security is everybody's business, and then you can perpetuate it that way. So you have a culture of security that's ubiquitous all over the place, right?
Very good. This is Carl Hill with Golden Technology Services, and my background has been close to 30 years with IBM, doing a ton of different jobs, opportunities there, and left IBM and thought I could play golf and make enough money to kind of sustain myself. That didn't work. So I decided to go with Golden Technology Services, and we started out primarily working with companies to help them kind of harden their security posture. So we could go in and do some security assessments, vulnerability assessments, some cyber awareness training, because the employee is really the weakest link within a lot of things that are there. And so literally after we do the assessments, we come up with a remediation report, and we not only give them the report, but we actually identify the critical and the high, and then we'll go in and we'll resolve those. And so one of the things that we're starting to see is pretty much the same thing as Mr. Mitchum said, is that there's so much going on in this marketplace that we really have to even step back and look at the things that have been out there already that may not have any security on them at all. And so we're partnering with some others to be able to go out and do some assessments on things that you normally don't even think about that needs to be assessment, because they need to be patched as well.
And Dr. McCullough.
I'm Johnetta McCalla, and I have over 30 years experience. Started out a company that was a defense contractor that did R&D, then went to, that was for like 10 years, and then went to another company I was the CEO of, and we call communications and control for security, CCTV cameras, that kind of stuff, for quasi-governmental like transit or airports or Air Force. And then about 5 years ago, we started Zy Robotics. My specialty is in embedded controllers, which is now called IoT. Before, they actually talk to the internet and they just talk to each other. And so I've been interested in the security aspects for quite a long time, maybe 10 years or so, because you could see that on the wall because you had a very small footprint with not enough room, and security and control of your interface was the last thing you did.
All right. Okay, so when thinking about smartphones and smart devices, if one does some research, it won't be very long before they reach this phrase called Internet of Things. So I want to kind of start there. Mr. Mitchum, why don't we start with you? What when we hear the phrase Internet of Things, what is that?
Well, it basically refers to any device that can be communicated with over the World Wide Web via what we call an IP address. And IP, simply put, is an Internet protocol, and it's derived from the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, right? And the genesis is this, okay? It started off with ARPANET back in the 60s, okay? And that was a Department of Defense initiative for security of our country. And then they dropped it, and then the University of Minnesota, GopherNet, picked it up, and they created this thing called Mosaic. And then that was our first browser, if you will. It created a little space where people were just using what they call bulletin boards, right? So the Internet of Things generated from things that you could add on to the network. Like Carl and I was talking, all the way down to the pacemaker for the ex-Vice President Cheney had an IP address so that the doctors could monitor his heart remotely. And you see the inherent dangers in doing that, right? Because just like a battery polarity on a battery, you have a positive and a negative post. And whatever was meant for good, you got for evil as well. So they could have assassinated the vice president via a denial of service attack, if you will, because Russians have been doing this for years. I came out of an environment with the Department of Defense Intelligence Information Systems out of Germany, and they have units that have been stand up for this purpose for years. And they've had internets of things, anything, a computer, a car, anything that can report back and communicate, again, over this protocol that's assigned numbers through the ICON. The American Registry is what we call our American Registry of Internet Numbers, is where we get our numbers, and then other countries have done it as well. But the standard is through IEEE and other little technical things. But the bottom line, to answer your question, anything that communicates over the network via an IP address is the Internet of Things.
That's pretty much what I was going to say as well. If you look at all of the devices that are out there today, the real secret is, from an IoT perspective, it allows the communications into the internet without human intervention. Mm-hmm. So a PC wouldn't necessarily, qualify for that. So it's any device, you mentioned the refrigerators, mm-hmm. the cars, mm-hmm. any device that can connect to the internet mm-hmm. and send data back without human intervention is the Internet of Things. So that just make it literally anything. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I'll mention that kind of created this huge opportunity is when we went from the Internet Protocol version 4 to the Internet Protocol version 6. And the net of it is that it just gave an unlimited number of IP addresses that could be used, because everything basically gives you the ability. 340 trillion IP addresses were created when IP6 was basically launched. And so once that happened, it made any device that could connect and collect data available. And the other big point is, once wireless became available, it gave you the ability where you didn't necessarily need a wired local area network to get it done as well. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about later on in the show about some of the latest innovations and technologies of how they're doing it from a farming perspective as well.
And so, Dr. McCullough, you had something you wanted to add?
What I was going to say is that the things part of the internet are, because computers are now small chips, everything that you think of now is computer controlled, like your mixer or your light bulb or, pacemaker. And all of those now have the added function that they can talk to, if designed that way, to internet. So it's everywhere. Your coffee maker, your teapot. It's easier to put a chip in there and have it do the control than to make hard wires with circuit boards. And so that's the way the technology has gone to.
And Ms. McCullough, you're absolutely correct. If you kind of go back to Mr. Mitchum's point about the devices, the low cost of the devices also drives it. The wireless connectivity drives it. The Internet Protocol version 6 drives it. And then the other thing that we really hadn't talked about that also drives it is the batteries, and the fact that you have batteries now that are low power that can go for years without having to be touched. And so all those things working in congruency drives the Internet of Things, and why so many developers are really spending a lot of time trying to come up with things to do that.
And so as a result of this, any type of item that we can think of can have this chip or this sensor and can send information to the internet. So one of the things that I recently read about was having a toothbrush that is connected. And so you can actually get data about how often you brush and whether you brush long enough. And this is information, whether you actually see the report or not. If you have this smart toothbrush, it is collecting the data. And you can, I was just reading as well about soccer balls that have these sensors and footballs that have these sensors. So any type of item that people use, there is the potential for a smart version of that to be created. And I think the consumer desire for kind of this automation is also driving it as well. So what that means is that there's a whole lot of data that's being collected. And so what should consumers be mindful of when this data about us is being collected? What should we think about in terms of who is getting this data, whether this data is being sold? What should we be concerned about, since this is becoming really ubiquitous?
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Well, if you're not the consumer and if you're not paying for it, then you're the product. And so what I mean by that is that if you're not paying Google for any email that you're receiving, then you are the product, right? And so you've given up your privacy, given what Carl and I was talking about in the hallway, these terms and conditions, your end-user license agreements, and you feel compelled with this insatiable appetite you have for getting connected to say, I got to have this app. So you just blindly click through saying, yes, 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 yes. Do you want to participate in helping us getting our product better and improve? And you click yes, because you assume that if you click no, you won't be able to get the access to the app, right? And so you're giving it to them. And so the three things you need to understand about all this data is, first off, it's called big data. And the way they manage it is through data aggregation. They collectively grab all the stuff that they can get, like from your toothbrush and all these things that you were talking about. Then they warehouse this data, the data warehousing feature, right? So they put it in a repository of databases all over the place. Google being the biggest one, right? And anytime you put in a search, you get a grade or a numerical score or whatever, right? And then this data mining aspect is where they come in and they make sense of all these different trends and all these different algorithms that this person said this, that person said that, and they come up with intellectual intelligence types of things that drive the market as to say this person uses product X more than they use product Y, and this person views this particular issue about politics this way, and then that's what the Russians did to try to sway our opinions in these polls. So that data is being manipulated. You own it, but you give it up. You abdicate it when you sign your life away with a affinity card at Lowe's, right? For a piece of bread, you say, well, look, it's 50% off. What the heck? Let me see your card. Here you are, right? And so.
But, this provides for convenience.
Yeah, supposedly.
To the public. Is it a viable trade-off where you're getting all of these new conveniences now, and you just have to give up a little information about the number of calories that you have in your mouth with your new toothbrush?
Yeah, I have a phrase, Attorney Joyner, that nothing is really free.
Nothing's free.
And so, the real key point here, as Mr. Mitchum mentioned, is that the data that's being collected is the data that you are freely giving up, number one. Number two, a lot of people click through these smart apps, and if you don't read the terms of service, then you don't necessarily realize that what's happening is you are signing away the data.
That's right.
You're giving them the opportunity to keep the data in the cloud. You allow them to keep the data for infinity. And the third thing that's even more scary is that you're also giving them the ability to share this data with the third party.
That's right.
And so the real interesting thing is that you may not even know that someone that you have no affinity to, no connection to, now can start tracking and sending you things that you had no idea that it was being shared with. And so, the question is, so here's a little funny dichotomy here. We used to give away this data for free by signing up on these apps. Now, you're paying to give it to them for free. Think about that. Yeah. You have an Echo or an Alexa in your home. You're paying them a monthly fee to get your data and to share it.
Wow.
Now, how crazy is that?
Wow.
Yeah. Dr.
Now,
McCullough?
one of the things is that one of the things that we as consumers do, as he mentioned, is we click everything. You don't necessarily have to do that. The companies hope that you do, but in a lot of cases, you can limit how much information you put out there. And that's what consumers can become aware of, the fact that if you read that, sometimes there's an option for you allow us to share this. Don't click that. Don't use the default password. Change it when you set up your hub or your Alexa. Change the default password. So all of these kind of things can limit how much information is collected for you. You do own the data, but some of those things give up your right to sue them if there's a problem. You don't have to check that.
And Ms. McCullough, you're absolutely right, but that's a very informed and highly knowledgeable consumer, and you know where that comes from. It's not that many folks that even go there. So
okay, and we're gonna pick up on that point because I had the same concern. The audience can't see my face, but. Yeah. Anyway, but you're listening to the Legal Eagle Review here on WNCU, and we've been talking this hour about privacy, the Internet of Things, smart devices, and we have with us in the studio Zachary Mitchum. He's the ITS Director of Security and Compliance At NCCU, we have Carl Hill, CEO and co-founder of Golden Technology Services. And on the phone, we have Dr. Janetta McCullough. She is Chief Executive Officer of Xi Robotics. And we're going to just take a quick break. We hope you will stay with us. We'll be right back.
Since 2010, the North Carolina Central University School of Law has been at the forefront of virtual legal education with the launch of its Virtual Justice Project. The Virtual Justice Project is an innovation in legal education and technology. NCCU School of Law pioneered this approach to address the underrepresentation of African American lawyers and a lack of access to justice for low-income and marginalized communities. Virtual pre-law courses prepare students, wherever they are, for the rigor of law school. The Know Your Rights series offers legal information sessions that empower participants to understand the law and to promote self-advocacy. Both the pre-law courses and the legal information sessions are made possible through telepresence and high-definition video conferencing. Course listings and contact information, along with more detail about the Virtual Justice Project, are on the NCCU Law website at law.nccu.edu.
And we're back. Thank you again for tuning in to the Legal Eagle Review here on WNCU 90.7 FM. I'm April Dawson, and my co-host Irving Joyner and I have been talking about security and smart devices and Internet of Things. And we have with us in the studio, Zachary Mitchum. He is the ITS Director of Security and Compliance. At NCCU, Carl Hill, CEO and co-founder of Golden Technology Services. And Dr. Janetta McCullough, Chief Executive Officer of Xi Robotics. And right before the break, we were talking about the data and this information that we as consumers have that we are giving away in large part because of the terms of agreement. And Dr. McCullough, you were saying right before the break that if you read the terms of service, that we may not have to give all the information away in order to use the services. And I had mentioned that when I heard that, I kind of made a little face, because even though I am a trained lawyer and have been for many, many, many years, it is incredibly difficult for me to go through all of that information. One, to go through it, and two, to really fully understand it. So it's a real solution if consumers want to protect their data. And Mr. Hill, let me have you comment on that.
Sure. So, as we were just talking earlier about the data and the terms of service, I just focused on those three things, that it's basically is in a third-party data center. You basically have given up your right for them to keep it through infinity, and then can share it with a third party. The other key thing that I think is even more scarier than your data that you are purposely giving back to them is this whole thing of re-identification. So if you go back and look at some of the largest breaches that have occurred with the Equifax and a lot of the healthcare, and knowing what's available now with big data, right? So you could just get snippets of information about an individual and basically start pulling that together from a puzzle to get a really good shape of who that individual is. So if you can capture healthcare information from Equifax about all your buying habits and things. So one of the things you don't, if you hadn't bought anything in a while, but if you go in and want to use and create some new password or to purchase something, they'll ask you, what color card was your first card that you bought? Or which address doesn't pertain to a home that you've lived in? Where is that historical data coming from? Now, if someone breaches the 3 credit reporting companies and can now merge that with any additional information that they've captured about you in social media, how scary is that?
Well, one of the things that I've heard in conversations with people about this is the feeling that, look, no one is sitting around behind a panel somewhere just trying to mine my information, because there is nothing about my information that's that important. Therefore, I really don't care that they are picking it up. Now, what do you say to that?
Attorney Joyner, you're absolutely right. The majority of the consumers think that. But if you go back to Cambridge Analytical and how they got caught with the 50 million names that they used to target individuals to get them to vote a specific way, the more and more this comes out in the media, people will no longer have that view that you just said.
And society.
The other thing I wanted to point out, being proactive and creative as opposed to there's nothing we can do. Sometimes just being suspicious, it's like it took a long time for us to learn how you don't just sign your name to a contract without at least trying to understand what it says. It's the same kind of principle that this data is important, and therefore don't check mark everything when someone gives it to you, even if you don't understand it. You say, well, do I have to check this? That helps to limit, even if you don't know what it is you're giving away.
And Dr. McCullough, going back to Attorney Joyner's point, if you're in a hurry to get something unboxed and to turn it on and to start using it, you are not going to go through that kind of logic to decide whether or not you're going to accept the terms of service or not.
The way I approach Attorney Joyner's proposition about it doesn't matter, the companies that are mining look at the aggregate, the proclivities of the tribal groups. We're animal spirits, like how they drive markets. They call it animal spirits. So we don't tend, individually, you might not care, but collectively, tribally, this is what this tribe likes to eat. This is what this tribe thinks about this. And so they make value judgments, and it's not an individual, it's a robotics. So, and like Dr. Janetta's thing, she's in artificial intelligence and expert systems. They create the algorithms that now provide these analytics for intelligent sources of information that says, look, this type of person that went to this kind of school likes this kind of stuff, and they will vote for this kind of candidate. So they're going to feed you a different kind of meal than they give the guy that went to this kind of school or this kind of candidate, right? So collectively, it's what they're looking at with the aggregate. They're not so much, like you said, the individual. In some cases, we have a thing they call whaling, right? They're looking for the big fish, and so they target them as well. But they are spearfishing for them to make sure that they get the right types of things they need from them. But for the most of us, the animal spirits, they look at us as an aggregate.
And just to put it in perspective to Attorney Joyner's and Attorney Dawson's view, doing a trial where you have these mock juries, or when you're selecting juries, you ask 3 or 4 questions and you throw them out.
That's
you
right.
say, well, I don't want this guy for whatever, or gal for this various reason.
Right.
But when you have the mock trials, you're trying to understand the perception, et cetera, et cetera. The fastest way to determine how to influence someone is through big data, because you already are starting to learn their proclivities and the things that they're very interested in, which is a marketing person's dream.
That's right.
So what this kind of raises in my mind is a couple of thoughts. One, the data's there. The data's already out there. So even if I decide to be a little bit more vigilant about should I check the box or not, and then I've got to make that decision, do I want to be able to avail myself of this technology? And oftentimes if you don't agree, you can't avail. So there's that. But even if I choose not to check, there's already so much of my data that is already out there. The other thought that kind of enters my mind is we are of a certain generation. Our children and grandchildren, though, are another generation.
Another tribe.
Totally different. They're in a totally different kind of species even. And they have grown up with this technology. So they are, so the thought that they would choose not to take advantage of it, it's difficult to kind of imagine that world, which means that their data from a very early age is already out there. So the data is there, and the consumers, it appears to me, we are not being protected. And whose role is that? Is it the government's role? Is it the manufacturer's role to make sure that they actually don't sell our data, to make sure that these devices are secure? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you have some laws that are out there to protect that. They have advocacy with the Federal Trade Commission.gov. That's one. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act, that's 18 U.S. Code 2510 and 1030, that prohibits people from getting into your networks in a surreptitious way without your express permission, right? But I'm starting a thing that is called identity cleansing, right? And this is basically new. When your loved one passes away, their stuff is still out there. You can get through the SSDI of your grandparents, you can get their Social Security number and all that. And so they get a Social Security number before they can determine if it's fallacious or not. If that person is dead, they can print off card stock and have a Social Security card and create a fake identity, right? With a picture ID or whatever, driver's license bureau, DMV, you can imagine. So what I'm proposing is to cleanse your data for your loved one or you by going back and challenging, if you don't need me to be on the environment, to cleanse them off. And then when I am successful, I go back and look for it. You have to be careful, because if you put a search in there, you got to score again, and you're creating another identity. So you have to be surreptitious. Now, I have things like social media sites that nobody can find me because I designed it that way. You couldn't ever find my Facebook site, for instance. That's a challenge, by the way, for anybody out there that wants to find me on social media. But I give everything that I want the public to see, I give it to them. But to answer your question, you do have laws like the North Carolina Identity Theft Protection Act. That's North Carolina NCGS, North Carolina General Statute 7565, that protects you from having to even give your social or any information about yourself unless it's a business decision. And with the EU, they got the General Data Protection Regulation that's coming out. Now, that's very yeah, I'm telling you right now, companies are running scared because they're feeling like, if I get sued from someone in the EU and I've got business in the EU based on the fact that you violated the GDPR, they're going to be a little intransigent. Exactly. Be careful about trying to take advantage of that. That, like you saying,
that rule allows consumers to pull their data
back,
to pull the data out. So I think it's a combination of consumer advocacy as well as government and the companies, because especially if you're talking about IoT, there has to be some input and some protection put in at the device level. So I think it's a combination in order to actually protect our privacy.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Can I just comment on that as well? The question is, how is the data protected and who has the responsibilities to do it? And Mr. Mitchum has, kind of gone through and said there are a lot of regulations and things that are out there. But, the net of it is that there are a lot of very large, smart people working for some very large companies that know that their livelihood depends on them protecting the data, and they're unable to, right? So the net of it is, and the question that you asked, Attorney Joyner, no one is sitting around trying to get the data, and they are, because it's the nation states, it's individuals that are looking to monetize it, with the ransomware, where they lock down. If someone came to you and say, we're going to lock up your Facebook, and we're going to lock up all the photos that you've taken on your PC unless you give me $500. And there are some people that will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for their photos not to be destroyed on their PC. So there are a lot of people out there. And then the second thing I like to say from an attorney standpoint, something that Mr. Mitchum mentioned about data cleansing, in the future, you should also start expecting to see these things as being part of estate planning and wills. Is that, you know, when I pass, I would like to make sure you know what my password was for my social media to go and either update it or at least know to get it, because they're now saying that unless the person tells us after they've dead,
That's right.
it's not going to be deleted.
That's right.
So,
But how
Also understand that Equifax, for example, the Equifax breach was done through use of cameras that they penetrated using Trojans, a whole bunch of cameras to get the amount of truth power it needed in order to breach Equifax.
yeah, so what they did, so the point that you're on is that they did some diffusion to basically get them focusing on something totally different, as it was a patch that had gone, it was a software that had basically gone unpatched. And to allow them to go in and package up all the data and exfiltrate it, they created a diffusion so that people wouldn't be able to see what they were doing, as all this data was diversion. I mean, I said diversion. A diversion where all this data was now being exfiltrated or sent back to the hackers. So you're right, Dr. McCalla.
Well, we're talking about security, personal security of your smart devices, devices that are smarter than you. We're going to take a break right now. This is a very heavy conversation that I know that you need time to digest, but want you to stay with us as we continue this discussion here on the Legal Eagle Review. We'll be right back.
I'm Marielle Kirby, a second-year law student at North Carolina Central University, and these are your announcements. The Adjunct Academy Workshop is open to part-time teaching faculty members and new faculty members who want to learn models of teaching and learning that engage college students with content in meaningful ways. The next session of the Adjunct Academy is scheduled for Friday, April 27th from 4:00 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. in the Nursing Building, room 2315. Participants will be introduced to assessment strategies that maximize student success using the layered curriculum and teaching with the millennial learner in mind. The School of Education is offering weekly tutoring and Saturday boot camp sessions for teacher education candidates who are preparing to take the state-required Pearson and/or Praxis 2 examinations. The remaining 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. boot camp session is scheduled for May 5th. Content specialists in the areas of literacy, mathematics, social studies, and science are available on these specific dates. The weekly tutoring sessions are scheduled on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. We ask that all participants sign in upstairs in the C&I reception area prior to going to the sessions. Please contact Dr. Nancy Reese-Durham for more information. The Susan G. Komen Triangle Race for the Cure will take place on May 5th at the Frontier at Park Center at 800 Park Offices Drive from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Those who plan to attend may register online. The event raises significant funds and awareness for breast health programs, celebrates breast cancer survivorship, and honors those who have lost their battle with the disease. This race is unique in the fact that 100% of the net proceeds are allocated to their mission. 75% of the net income stays in our community to help fund local programs offering breast health education and breast cancer screening and treatment. The remaining 25% of the net income supports the Susan G. Komen Research Grants Program. May 11th through May 13th is NCCU's graduation weekend. Congratulations to all of our graduates. I'm Marielle Kirby with your Legal Eagle update. Thanks for listening.
And we're back. Thank you again for tuning in to the Legal Eagle Review here on WNCU 90.7 FM. I'm April Dawson, and my co-host Irving Joyner and I have been talking with our guests about Internet of Things, smart devices, our security, and our privacy. And we have with us here in the studio Carl Hill. He is the CEO and co-founder of Golden Technology Services. We also have with us in the studio Zachary Mitchum. He is the ITS Director of Security and Compliance with NCCU. And on the phone, we have Dr. Janetta McCullough. She is Chief Executive Officer of Xi Robotics. And right before the break, we were talking about, Dr. McCullough, you had mentioned, and Mr. Hill, you had kind of fleshed out the data breach that occurred because of the devices, these particular webcams. And that raises another issue. So we've been talking about consumers and the protection of their privacy and how consumers need to be mindful of what information they're giving away. But the other thing in terms of these devices, it raises another issue that consumers have to be aware of, is that not all Internet of Things devices that you purchase have the type of security that you would want them to have. So not only now do we as consumers have to be concerned about giving our data away, but we also have to, before we purchase these devices, to figure out if they have the type of actual software security that will prevent these types of breaches. So again, and it really kind of raises this question, the three of you are experts. This is what you do. This is how you all, pay for your shoes. You all are at a much higher level than the average consumer.
I'm barefooted.
I don't know. You mentioned golf the other day. But so the question is, do consumers generally really know about the data issues? And also when they're purchasing, and oftentimes consumers are looking for what's the cheapest device that I can get. And it may very well be that the cheapest device or the cheaper devices don't have the type of security that's necessary. How do we get this information across to consumers?
Yeah, I'll just one thing that's really interesting on that particular point that I brought up in February is, you buy all of this equipment, you put it in your home, but you don't do the simple hygienes. As an example, there was a family that were at home, they were sleeping at home, and they heard someone yelling and talking in their baby's bedroom, and the husband got up and went into the room, and the baby monitor camera was just moving back and forth, up and down, and someone calling through the internet was saying, "Baby, wake up, baby, wake up." And when they went through and did the research on it, they found out that the family did not change the standard password 1234, right? And so you have to do those things. And the other thing that you have to do is that when these companies launch and introduce new security patches, you have to download them. If not, you're leaving back doors in for the hackers and the criminals to get in. And sometimes you just have to throw away what you have because it cannot be patched and updated.
And I want to add to that, when you have deprecated systems like you were referring to, like your wireless, WPA2 is the standard now. It used to be WEP. So if you have mother using equipment that you just gave to her, Windows 95 and all that with WEP, you're doing her a disservice, because now you're setting her up for these scammers that come in and call on the telephone. Somebody just called me, baby, from the IRS and said that they needed $300 before tomorrow. They're going to take you hostage, so I gave it to them. What? That's crazy. So I have some PSA type stuff, public service announcement stuff. They can download things like Web of Trust, these little hooks that they put on their web browser to let you know you're browsing in a bad neighborhood. And, hey, wait a minute, that's some bad stuff with some bad reputation for this website. Don't go there, right? And that's Web of Trust. And another one is Cell Spy Catcher. Now, they have a thing called the Signaling System 7 for the web, for your telephonic communications, right? SS7. And you might want to go online and Google SS7 hacking. And this Cell Spy Catcher will help you when someone's trying to talk to your cell phone. And that's pretty violating when somebody's talking to your device and you don't know they're doing it. Like when your Bluetooth services is on and you don't have a security on the Bluetooth, then you have interceptors, like when you're walking the airport, to get information off your smart device that way. So I advise people to turn off all your unused services. You don't have to be cute with your, making people think you're important by walking around with your Bluetooth all in your ear and all that. Turn that stuff off, right? But these other apps that they have that can help you, like OpenDNS.com, that will screen, filter things that you don't need to have come to your house, that helps with a lot of ransomware. They've already screened sites that are known for locking your devices up, and there's nothing you can do with it, right? So what we want to do is encrypt this data on your cell phone. We want to make sure you have passwords on your cell phone and your little, what do you call those, patterns. Mm-hmm. But you just don't leave it open, right?
Well, let me just say, is there, with in this internet world, this cloud world, is there a level of security that cannot be penetrated?
Yeah, when you take it off the network.
Exactly.
So that's the only way.
That's it.
So if you're out there in it, there is someone who is
without
constantly working on a way to get past every barrier that you pose.
And I was that little kid. I'm the hey diddle diddle Zach's in the middle. I'm the 7th of 13. I will find a way, to find.
It's like a burglar into your house.
That's right. They'll find a way.
All you trying to do when you protect your house is to make it so it's harder to do you, so they go somewhere else.
That's right. It's just like water. Water will find its way. Fire will find its way. A crook will find a way.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Dr. McCalla. Just from a hygiene perspective, Attorney Joyner, you want to do as much as you can that's economically feasible for you. To make it hard, and I kind of use it when I give my presentations, is that there are some people that do these things, as a point of convenience, where you have kids that walk by cars in the parking lot and see if the door is open, and the ones that's open, you're in trouble, right? But if you lock it, they move on because they are doing it from a convenience. But if you find someone that's a serious burglar, right, they will look and see whether or not they think there's something of value. And they will spend a lot of time trying to get in your car if they feel they can get it done without being noticed. And then if they think it's really, really important, they will follow you and know what and where you go and how long you stay and how much time they have. And that's the way some of the hackers do. They see you as someone that has something of value, and that's why they probably spent months, as an example, trying to get inside of Equifax until they finally found that there was a software, a web software that they were using from an interface perspective that Equifax failed to patch. And a notice went out in April to Equifax and all the people that had it, but they didn't update it. A second notice went out and they didn't update it, and then after that the hackers got in, and even if they had patched it, they were already there and they could take whatever they needed to get out.
And we're talking about webcams, right?
Well, this wasn't a webcam per se. This is the web software that they were using from a customer interface perspective that they were using that needed to be patched. It's kind of like when you get your Microsoft updates, right? You get those and you're supposed to turn your PC off or click on it and let it update. And I know a lot of people that says, well, I'm busy, and they go busy for 30 days and they never get it updated. They're just leaving themselves vulnerable to being hacked.
So this whole notion of hygiene and the fact that we need to be mindful of, the updates and, are we doing a good job of educating consumers generally, but also the young people who are such heavy consumers of the technology? And Dr. McCall, I know that part of what your company does relates to educating children. What are your thoughts about whether we're doing a good job as a society of informing our young people of these very important steps that they need to take to make sure that they're protected?
I don't think we're doing that good a job. I think, like you said, most people figure, well, it doesn't pertain to me. I don't have to worry about it. Or I don't care. I like people to know about me. The whole, social media concept. So I think part of education has to be, it's not for you, it's for everyone. Mm-hmm. Like the teaching people get flu shots, not really to protect them, but to protect the whole environment from catching the flu. That's why people get, that's why people get shots, to cut down on the number of threat elements. So I think that's the kind of education that has to go forth, and not much has been done in that area. Homeowners care, maybe, a little bit. Businesses care, but not much has been done to for businesses to show consumers that, hey, if you don't protect yourself, they come against us, and then that hurts you in the long run.
Yeah. Dr. McCullough, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go on. I was just saying that's the kind of the message that has to go forth. And I don't even see that.
And Dr. McCullough, you're absolutely correct. One of the really scary things, to kind of go to your question, Attorney Dawson, is the fact that you've gotten these emails from people that you're in their address book, and you get these emails from them, and there's no subject line. Mm-hmm. You open it up, and all that's in there is a URL, right? Now, the way these hackers do it, they may buy these emails, they may hack into you. Someone may have done some reconnaissance and stole it, and then they sell it on the dark web. So the person that did the reconnaissance isn't doing this. They don't have time to do this. They just sell it for $10, that address book. And then these folks will go and send an email to you, and they know that 30% of the people will open it and click on the URL. And if it has something in it that says, this is the best picture I have of us on the subject line, they increase the percentage that people are going to click on it goes up exponentially. And so your kids are vulnerable to that simply because they don't have any protection. They will click on it. They will drop malware on your kid's PC, and then you will get something from them, and you may not necessarily question it. And so now you are, in fact, and they were trying to get to you anyway, but you were smart enough not to open up any of their emails. And so I tell people, if you get an email from a credit card company and you don't have that credit card company, don't open the damn email. They're not giving you any money, right? And so data is the new oil now. So the point that I want to kind of get you to, data is the new oil, and the more people can identify you and do data analytics on, the more they have the opportunity to get you to do whatever they want.
I'm going to go a little counter to what Dr. McCullough was saying about the education piece. These forms are imperative. They're paramount, and that's what I use these forms for, to educate, right? And I came in the military after the Vietnam War, right? And they had an old saying, stay alert, stay alive. And I countered that mantra in saying, stay alert, stay secure, right? So each individual is incumbent on them to be smart about it. When I go into a movie theater, I teach my children how to survive the active shooter. They've known since they were children, the first thing they do in any environment is find the exits. Always be aware of where your exits are and suspicious behavior. That's just stuff that I taught them from being in the military. I was a grunt, right? So those are the things I look for, suspicious activity. And so when I talk about each one, reach one, these segments, oh my God, I'll drop everything. I told my boss, we had I think she hears me now. I can't. Executive council meeting. I said, Leah, I got to go over here and talk to these people. I mean, this is the way we can get our information out to a broad scope, and especially on a jazz station with students, right? And this beautiful audience. So Each one reach one. And there's a website, our website. Go to our website. This is a shameless plug. IT security at nccu.edu, right? And just go to IT security's website. And we also have something with the Federal Trade Commission, staysafeonline.org, right? Stay safe, one word, staysafeonline.org. And that helps people become a more informed populace about what's going on in the automation realm. We do keep it simple. We don't go into cross-site scription forgery requests and nothing like that. Data validation in order to thwart SQL injections and all that. Forget that. All I want you to do is exercise good computing behavior, and you'll be okay. All right.
That's a very good point. And just to tack on, for these Alexas and things that are sitting in your home that is providing strong convenience, just understand that anything that you say may and will be used against you. And so you
Sounds like a lawyer.
Miranda,
so,
right.
And so if you
And TV.
And if you don't want anyone to know, put that particular device in a place where it's not in a room where you're carefree and doing whatever you want to do. Just
and
know.
Don't keep it on all the time.
And do what?
Don't
Dr.
keep it
McCall?
on.
Keep it on all the time.
Don't keep it on all the time. Turn it on only when you want to use it.
Yeah.
But just understand that you are connected, and you just need to monitor and know what is being used to pull data about you and your habits.
And turn that television off.
Well, the smart TVs actually are listening to you as well. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Garrett, very much for inviting us. I really enjoyed sharing.
Well, thank you all. And yes, unfortunately, we're out of time. But this was, a great discussion. We hope you, our listening audience, have learned something, and that you make sure you do that due diligence when it comes to these technology and privacy and security issues, because it's only going to increase. We're going to have more and more devices that are connected. We'd like to thank our guest, Carl Hill. He's the CEO and co-founder of Golden Technology Services, Zachary Mitchum, who is the ITS Director of Security and Compliance here at our very own North Carolina Central University, and Dr. Janetta McCullough. She is Chief Executive Officer of Xi Robotics. And you, our listening audience, as well, of course, we'd like to thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us. If you have any questions about this show, or if you have any topics you'd like for us to cover, you can send us an email. You can reach us at legaleaglreview@nccu.edu. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next week, stay informed and engaged.